Elizabeth Brooks is currently the deputy at the Department of Veterans Affairs Center for Women Veterans. She is a Cold War era Army veteran. Prior to coming to the VA, Elizabeth served as the Oregon Women Veterans Coordinator with the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, where she's working on relevant issues that include domestic violence, sexual assault, military sexual assault, peer support services, community safety, gender and culturally responsive services, and adult learning. She holds a bachelor's of science degree in gender studies and political science from Eastern Oregon University, where she graduated summa cum laude, and a Master's of Science in Social Work from Columbia University. She was appointed to the Department of Veterans Affairs 2012 National Domestic Violence Task Force and was a 2013 Fisher Cummings Washington, D.C. Fellow. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce to you the Deputy at the Department of Veterans Affairs Center for Women's Veterans, Elizabeth Estabrooks. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much, Jennifer. I appreciate you having me here today at this great event. And I didn't know that your VMAC was one of the best. It's always wonderful to hear that news. I come from Portland, Oregon, and had the great privilege of being at one of the best there in the country too. And for women veterans, that means a lot. So congratulations on the wonderful work. I'll have to come visit one of these days. All right, so here we are. So a lot of people ask why there is a Center for Women Veterans. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about the Center for Women Veterans, but I was also asked to talk about military, how the military has helped empower women, not just veterans, but as a whole. So I have some slides prepared for that. So over the years, people have asked, why do we need a Center for Women Veterans? Both women and men have asked that question, veterans and non-veterans. And I think that this sign speaks volumes about why we need a Center for Women Veterans. These notes are why we need a Center for Women Veterans. A lot of you women veterans have experienced something similar to that. Women get notes like this on their car when they park in reserved veteran parking at Lowe's or other places. And as long as women are not recognized as veterans, as long as women get notes like this and are challenged as veterans, we need a Center for Women Veterans. We need organizations like Operation Sisterhood. In a 2016 survey by the Service Women's Action Network, 74% of the respondents said that the general public did not recognize their service. And that matters, quite a lot. So the Center for Women Veterans, we were established in 1994 by Congress, along with the Center for Minority Veterans. So simply put, we work to ensure that women are recognized for their service in the military and that they are receiving equitable services both within and outside the VA. And this is accomplished primarily through our mandate to advise the Secretary and other leaders to disseminate that information widely and to support the Advisory Committee on Women Veterans. One of the ways we disseminate that is through our social media, and another way is through our monthly partner meetings. We also have, our vision, of course. Who doesn't have a vision? And that vision is simply to modernize the center, extend its outreach, and ensure equity. But we do have some focus areas of outreach, internal advocacy, research, and performance management and accountability. And we've started increasing our research in the last year. And I'm going to talk about some of the research that we're doing in a slide later. And I think that you're all going to be excited about some of that. So stay tuned for that. So there are currently 2 million women veterans, and we are growing. Women are actually enlisting in the military at a higher rate than men, and women of color in particular are enlisting at a higher rate. So we're currently 10% of the veteran population, 15% of the US active duty force, 18% of the National Guard and Reserve, and 20% of all new military recruits. So it's actually anticipated that will be 18 to 20% of the veteran population by 2040. And I always like to talk about this because everybody has to be prepared for that influx of women veterans into their services, into their medical services, into their benefit services, into whether they're working on housing or peer support, or whether they're a small veteran serving organizations, whether it's the VA or a partner. People need to be prepared for the fact that more women are going to be coming into their services. And how do they prepare their environment, their employees, their programs, literally everything? Because I always say, people assume that men are veterans, and they assume that women are not. And male is the default veteran. So what we need to do is when we say veteran, literally it's default male. So how do we look at our programs and understand that when we say we have a veteran serving program, what we're saying is we have a white male veteran serving program? How do we shift that mindset and start looking at analyzing our programs and thinking, is our program really serving women veterans? Is it really serving Black women veterans? Is it really serving Latina women veterans? Is it serving our full women veteran population, our lesbian veteran population, our full LGBTQ? Is it serving all of our veteran population the way it could be, or is it serving that default male population? So when we think about the fact that our women veteran population is growing, how do we examine our programs to really make sure that it's gender specific and focusing on that growing women veteran population? So how do we engage and connect? We do it through outreach, advocacy, and research. And advocacy is actually in our mandate. We intercede on behalf of women veterans who are encountering hurdles. So if you're with the VA and you get an email from the Center for Women Veterans, it's because that's part of our mandate. If we get an Ask VA request from a woman veteran, it is our job to send out an email and say, hey, we got this email from a woman veteran, and we're now on her behalf inquiring about what she asked us to inquire about. We conduct outreach. We have 2 outreach staff who go out to events, to the DAV National Conference, the Vietnam Veterans of America National Conference, et cetera. We make sure we do it. We have one of the most active social media pages for the VA, to make sure that women veterans are finding out about things. So if you are doing something big, please let us know. Send out Missy Nishalis, and you'll see her information on the last slide, or one of the last slides. She's an amazing outreach manager. If you have anything you want us to share for women veterans, please do let us know. We share whatever we can when it comes to women veterans. And we do a lot of research so we can make sure that women veterans are represented. I remember several years ago when I first started, it was so frustrating because I kept hearing, oh, there aren't enough women veterans for us to do research on them. And I kept saying, but there are 2 million of us. Of course, there's enough. And that has changed, thankfully. But we're really working hard to make sure that women are represented in that. And sometimes we'll reach out and say, we've been contacted and we need some women veterans to engage in this research. And we participate in webinars, social media engagement, and Facebook Live events, website engagement, and email. Some of the things that we do around tables, we've done these. We're working on putting one together for the Guam and Philippines. We try to recognize that women veterans don't exist just in the continental United States. We're working on how do we make sure that we're also reaching the women who are in the territories and in other countries. We have MOAs with Women Veterans Interactive, Minority Veterans of America, Library of Congress, and others. We have internal partnerships with the IDEA, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Subcouncil. And we recently started working with the Pacific Region Working Group Participation to make sure that we're reaching women in the Mariana Islands, Guam and the Philippines, so that because they don't have great services out there. So how can we make sure that we're working with them? In the survey that I'll talk about later, you'll hear me talk about the fact that we had that translated into Gaelic, so that the women who do speak that primary language first can take that survey in their first language. And we have a close collaboration, of course, with the Center for Minority Veterans. So why and how do we engage with our VA partners? We do that so we can make sure that we can share that updated information. That policies and programs shift. We turn to our partners at Women's Health quite frequently, so we can make sure that our partners, for instance, we will oftentimes have our partners from Women's Health come to our partnership meetings once a month and report out. You'll find that we have them come, especially during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, during Domestic Violence Awareness Month, during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We will have them come and speak. If we know that there have been changes to women's health programs, we will invite them to come and speak about what those changes are and why they're important, so that our partners can get those out to women veterans and to partners. We get that bilateral feedback on trends and insights from partners. So if our partners are saying, this is what we're hearing from the field, we also get that out to our internal partners. And we work in an advisory capacity related to gender and racial cultural appropriateness in the areas of policy, health, mental health, claims, and research. We think that's really important. When we talk about gender, we don't just do it through a single lens. We do it through an intersectional lens, recognizing that women aren't just women. Women are Black women. Women are Asian. Women are lesbian women, Black women. We work to make sure that transgender women have a place in the VA. We try diligently to make sure that when we get a views document, we're looking at through that lens. When we get a document about housing, we're looking at it through that lens. How does this housing policy affect all women veterans? Is it going to work for transgender women veterans? Is it going to work for Black women veterans who are, or for Native women veterans who are in rural areas? So we really attempt to use our intersectional lens when we're serving in an advisory capacity. Some of the campaigns we've done, we've done the hashtag Bring Women Veterans Home to VA. There are 2 million women veterans, but only approximately 800,000 are enrolled with the VA, and 500,000 are using the VA. We recognize that a lot of women may have other like health insurance, but we also recognize that some women may just not be using the VA. And in many ways, the VA might be better for women veterans. For instance, in suicide ideation, women who use the VA are better off. And so how can we do a better job of bringing women to the VA? And especially connecting women to their benefits is so helpful for women veterans. You know, that money is tax-free. Women veterans who don't use their benefits are leaving money on the table. They're leaving their housing, their VA loans on the table. They're leaving so many benefits on the table. And I'm passionate about making sure that women aren't doing that. So how do we work together to make sure that women veterans are getting the benefits that they earned and deserved? And we use the I Am Not Invisible campaign in a lot of ways to make sure that women understand that they served and they deserve those benefits and come on and get them. Even if you choose not to use VA benefits. When I was in Oregon, I would hear women and men also say, no, I have health insurance. But then what happened, for instance, was COVID. And people lost their jobs and they lost their health insurance. And there was, those of you who work in benefits probably remember that there was quite a lot of people started applying for their benefits during COVID. People lost their health insurance. And then they were at a place where they thought, oh my goodness, I need to apply for my health insurance. And I witnessed a lot of people. I had just been at a stand down right before COVID, and the same people who said, no, I have health insurance, were calling me and saying, how do I apply for my benefits? If we have our health benefits, and we have health insurance right now, if we have our service-connected disability benefits, we have that cushion. We have that money cushion. We have that health insurance cushion, so that even if something happens to our job, that's something that we have that we can fall back on when we need it. And that's one of the reasons I'm passionate about connecting veterans to their benefits. The research we're doing, we're just completing the 2020 NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, mandated that we complete a study on 9/11 women veterans and unemployment, because the rate of unemployment among 9/11 women veterans is higher. And we're really excited about that. We a little peer into it. One of the things that we did, because I've worked with women veterans so long, I understood that there were reasons that women are unemployed besides training and the basic things that people had examined. So one of the things that I said was, let's look at mental health, MST, and other barriers to employment. So we included that as our variables in that study, and I think it's going to be a really impressive study when we release it. We're also doing an intimate partner violence study that we were mandated to complete. That will be released in December. And we are doing a study of women veterans who don't use VA services and benefits. That was something that I wanted to do from the time I came on, and we finally got approval to do it, and we released it in November. And it's really strictly for women who aren't using their VA services and benefits. And we released that in November. We've already had almost 9,000 women complete that survey. And so we're really excited about release. We're going to release those preliminary numbers in April at our partners meeting. So we do a Women Veterans Day event every June 12th, and we're doing another one this year. We have an initiative called Naming VA Spaces, where that VA facilities can take one space in their building and rename it for a woman veteran. We do MOAs, outreaching events, etc., and we engage on social media, all social media. I found out we even have a Pinterest account. Oops, sorry. And then, of course, we have our advisory committee on women veterans, and we engage in special events. And the I Am Not Invisible campaign, we're also working with the Library of Congress to do the 3.0, the Veterans History Project. If you weren't able to catch our Facebook Live event the other night, you can see it on the Library of Congress Facebook page. If you haven't told your Veterans History Project story, please do. It's so important that we tell our own stories. As one woman said, we get the chance to tell history right. So please tell your story. You can reach out to our office or to the Library of Congress to find out how you can tell your story. And then the survey, we have translated it into English or into Spanish and Tagalog. So if you want to find out how you can share that survey, here's the link. It'll be on the slide. You can also contact me or anyone in our office, and we can tell you how to do that. It's a really important survey, so please feel free to share. So now I'm going to talk about empowerment. This is how I'm going to finish it up. This is Virginia Woolf, is one of my favorite authors. The history of most women is hidden either by silence or flourishes in ornaments that amount to silence. And I love that quote, because I think that it applies to a lot of women, and especially to women veterans. So I like the slide because it talks a lot about the women in our history who have done things and are not are invisible. Cathay Williams, she was a Buffalo Soldier. And I talk about this because these women did empower other women who were in the military, and they empowered women after them. And I think that's really important. Cathay Williams was a woman who disguised herself as a man, William Cathay, and served as Buffalo Soldier. Many people don't realize that there was a woman who was a Buffalo Soldier. Sarah Emma Edmonds, people always think about Dr. Mary Edwards Walker when they think about women who served in our history, and that's where they stop. Ola Mildred Rexroth, she's a Native woman who was a WASP. So we really have to expand our mind when we think about women in our military history. And this one, the big thing about this slide that I want to talk about when I talk about empowerment is that during the reason that World War I women serving was important is there were 200,000 women who served during World War I. And I'm going to tell you why that was important and how that helped empower women who weren't in the military, is that those women serving helped establish the right to vote. Suffragists and the women in the military used this phrase: if you're good enough for war, you're good enough to vote. And both the women serving and the suffragists used that phrase. And in his speech, September 30th, 1918, President Woodrow Wilson, who was opposed to the women's right to vote, said, "We have made partners of the women in this war. Shall we admit them only to a partnership of suffering and sacrifice and toil, and not to a partnership of privilege?" So that really is a perfect first example of how actively women who served empowered women throughout this country. And when we talk about women in Vietnam, there were 11,000 military women deployed in Vietnam, and oftentimes during the Vietnam commemoration celebrations, those women are forgotten. There are 8 women killed in combat, and their names are on the wall. And I think that's really important. But when we talk about the Vietnam War in particular, I'm going to go straight into the women's empowerment. And I love this quote as well: "Some women are lost in the fire and some are built from it." And I think that's really true of women veterans, because we don't let a lot stop us. And those of you online who are veterans, you get that. So in 1970, there was a woman named Susan Struck. She was in during Vietnam, and she was a US Air Force captain. And she became pregnant. And during that, prior to 1975, women who got pregnant during their military service were forced to discharge and they gave her a choice: discharge or have an abortion. And so she said, "Not today, son." And so she, Struck versus Secretary of Defense, Ruth Bader Ginsburg argued it for her and said it violated a woman's reproductive rights, equal protection, and due process, and also said it was economical and unwise to dismiss an officer. So she won. It set the standard for sex-based. It didn't actually go to the Supreme Court, although it was set to. The Solicitor General recommended the Air Force waive the discharge and change its policy, and they did. But before the DoD actually changed its policy in 1976, more than 7,000 women were discharged for pregnancy. But this did set the standard for sex-based discrimination is not permitted under the law. So in 1972, RBG brought it again. So the Air Force had a policy, the military had a policy that said, unlike wives, a husband had to be, in order to be considered independent, had to have at least half of his material support come from his military wife. Sharon Frontero sought the with dependent rate for her housing, as well as medical and dental benefits for her civilian husband. And the Air Force said no, because he's got to get at least half of his material support. And RBG said no. So she actually quoted this when it became Frontero versus Richardson. She quoted this: "I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask for our brethren is that they take their feet off of our necks." So she, at that time, was an ACLU attorney and successfully argued that sex was a suspect criterion, and the military's stance amounted to discrimination against women members and did not pass constitutional muster. After that, the military was forced to pay the same benefits to both men and women, and it was considered a landmark case for gender equality. Fast forward to 1995, 347 young women went after the Virginia Military Institute about their discriminatory policy admitting only men. At the time, that was the only public institution still discriminating against women, allowing only men. And Department of Justice found their practice unconstitutional. It was overturned by the District Court, and the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed that, holding the practice was indeed unconstitutional. in steps United States versus Virginia. And Justice Ginsburg at that time was on the Supreme Court and asked the Solicitor General, if women are to be leaders in life and in the military, then men have got to become accustomed to taking commands from women, and men won't become accustomed to that if women are not let in. And it was found by SCOTUS that the Women's Institute would prevent women from attaining equal opportunities, and that Justice Ginsburg wrote that the court effectively struck down all law which denies women simply because they are women. So these three cases really were seminal cases that directly impacted all cases related to equity and equality for women later. Although they were directly related to women in military, it reached further impacting all women. So this is just an example. These three cases were directly related to those three cases because those three cases were used to argue these cases. So this is just an example of how women in the military were really used to empower women everywhere. So, this is, I know I think I'm out of time now. So just quickly.
No, please share, because this is very interesting. I'm loving this.
Women's military history is my thing. So after some of those things changed, the women in the military continued to rise. The percentage, there was always a cap. Even after the draft ended, there was a cap, but that cap was released. It was President Carter was a very progressive president, so he started changing the number of women who could be in. He expanded the number of enlistments or the number of jobs that were available for women. Reagan came in and dismantled some of those policies, but when women can, we do. We just kept pushing at it and pushing at it and pushing at it. The numbers continued to rise. Women continued to enlist at higher numbers. Women were admitted to the service academies. And the interesting thing about this is that women were doing the work. They were going into combat missions. They were deploying during, in 1991 and 92, they were deploying during the first Gulf War. They were flying this mission. But in 1994, Congress said, yeah, no, let's slow the roll. And they put in the combat exclusionary policy. They said women had to be excluded from assignments to units below the brigade level whose primary mission was to engage in direct combat. And that seemed harmless, just like don't ask, don't tell on the surface seemed harmless. But what that meant was it didn't just mean we couldn't be in infantry units. It meant we couldn't do any job that might put us in anything that seemed like it might be in combat. And so that didn't just affect us there directly. It meant a lot. It meant that women, everyone in the military knows that women can't, if you can't be in combat, that can affect your ability to promote. It can affect your pay. It can affect your retirement, your retirement. It long-term affects women. It can also, what we discovered, affect your ability to get service-connected disability benefits. And the Lionesses are a good example of that. Because when the Lionesses started in 2003, they were attached to combat teams, and they went into combat areas, and they were on the ground with the combat engagement teams. And they came home with their brothers that they had served with, and they said, I was in combat. And that VA said, no, you aren't, women aren't in combat. And so they were being denied combat service-connected disability benefits, as were many of the women who were in Iraq. And so because of this combat exclusionary policy, women were finding more and more, especially post 9/11, that they were being denied, as were some of the first Gulf War women, they were being denied benefits, combat benefits. So that combat exclusionary policy was exceedingly harmful to women in many, many ways. But of course, women continued we don't let stuff like that stop us. We just keep going anyway. We keep raising our hand and saying, send me, I'll go, because that's what we do. So women were, we got the first command, Sergeant Leanne Hester got the Silver Star. Monica Lynn Brown, the Solar Star General Ann Dunwoody, the first to achieve 4-star. And when we think about this, when we think about the reality of this, imagine what a man would say if it took him from the American Revolution until 2008 to get 4-star officer ranks. if it had taken a man that many hundreds of years to get a 4-star rank, when they'd been serving all those years, it took women. We've been serving that long and women have done amazing things, but it took that long, but still we did what we did. And it took from 2003 until 2009 for them to formally establish the female engagement teams, even though they started them in 2003. So Tammy Jo Schultz is really what she did. This was a result of women. She was a woman who landed that crippled Southwest airline plane, and she was one of the first women fighter pilots in the U.S. Navy. And I think that when these things happen, it's important to say, yeah, our sister did that. And in January 2013, Leon Panetta, who will forever be one of my favorite secretaries of defense, he on his way out the door, he said, "Oh, and by the way, I'm going to get rid of the combat exclusionary policy." And a lot of people huffled and puffled about that. They were unhappy about that, but he did it anyway. And as a result, in 2016, Kristen Geist and Shay Haber became the first Rangers. And I cried that day because when I was in basic training in 1990 or 1978. I said, I want to be a Ranger. And they used a lot of curse words and said, "Go away, Estabrooks. Girls will never be Rangers, not in this man's army, not now, not ever." And so this was a big day because it was a turning moment in this country. And so since then, women have continued to make history doing all of this, and the numbers have grown, and women's history is happening right now, and it's something that we should celebrate every single day. So the rest of the slides, we have apps, we have resources. So I would encourage you. These are, and I want to talk about our staff women's history. Shannon Middleton, Lourdes, our director, is an Air Force veteran. Shannon Middleton is a Navy veteran. Messina Shalas is a Navy veteran. Anna Claudio is a Navy veteran. Michelle Terry is not a veteran. She's a proud mother of a Navy veteran. She has been with our office 14 years. And Julia Kelly is a retired command sergeant major. So with the Army, go Army. And that's it. This is our email is a 00W. So thank you for allowing me to go over, and thank you for having me here today. And if anybody has any questions, please do email.